Welcome to the Monos Pod with Tino and Matt. What's up, Matt?
How's it going? Looking forward to baseball moving forward.
That's right. Did you catch that Yoshinobu Yamamoto debut yesterday?
Um, yeah, I saw the highlights. It looked good.
It's bananas. I
The funniest part about it is this. Were you listening to the broadcast as well?
mhm.
Yeah, with how they were pointing out, you could see how he was gripping
Yeah,
center field, and then you ask the question, well, does it really matter? It's
right,
so good, right?
right.
It's kind of like when Granke's stuff was so good, right? He would just tell people what he's gonna
Well, that
throw.
one. What's funny is that's the comp that people are making right now is having that many pitches that are that nasty with that kind of command. Is the comp has been Greinke, like prime Greinke, basically. Yeah, when you see somebody swing at a fork ball that's bouncing like 58, is going 57, 58 feet, and these are major league hitters like Nathaniel Lowe and Leody Tavares, it was pretty ugly. I'm psyched. I've got him in our home league, obviously, and I did draft him in TGFBI as well. So super excited about uh, Yamamoto. Today we are going to start our top 100 trek. Both of us completed our top 100s this week. We will go from 81 to 100 today. And then we will do chunks of 20 over the next 5 weeks to get to number one. But the lists are done. I don't anticipate moving many guys on this list before 5 weeks from now, unless we see something crazy in spring training. But this should be fun. And
Mhm.
I think
And I
that
think I think starting from the bottom of the list is fun too because I think there'll be a lot more difference between what we have here.
totally, I agree. Do we start at 100 then and work our way directly
Yeah.
up?
Mhm.
Cool. Who do you have at the bottom of your list?
The bottom of my list, I have Nolan Shanuel, first
Nice.
baseman for the Los Angeles Angels. Drafted last year in the first round, 11th overall. Great contact hitter. Great with plate discipline. So in the minors last year, he had a brief stint, 97 potential at bats, 365 batting average, on base percentage over 500. He's one of those players who has the on base percentage around the same as the slugging percentage. The slugging
Mhm.
percentage lower. And the 992 OPS. This is between rookie A ball, and double A. He skipped double A and came up to the Angels. The skip of double A, the skip of triple A is interesting because he's definitely going to be starting for the Angels this year.
Mhm.
When he came up, he had 20 walks, 19 strikeouts, 275 batting average again, and on base percentage really high, 400, but his slug was 330. With these players, I'm also giving them, besides their scouting rankings, I've added a floor and ceiling ranking.
Mhm.
Um, so using the scout scale, I think he's a 74 player. He's predictable as far as what he's going to do. He's not going to hit a lot of home runs that you want out of a corner position. He is going to get on base. He's not going to score tons of runs, maybe in the future if the Angels ever get things right, but not now.
Mhm.
Probably not going to drive in tons of runs. For ceiling, he's like at the ultimate low, like at a 30. I don't think his power is going to develop anything over 20 home runs. And he is going to hit the spray the ball all over the place. Even if you watch him in spring, that's what he's already doing.
Mhm.
So he'd be the ideal player if he did have speed and got on base and could give you steals, could give you runs, but at first base, that's not going to happen.
Right.
So kind of a 30 floor, 30 ceiling, 70 floor guy is the type of guy that I would want to maybe eventually draft at the end of a draft,
Right.
to fill holes, but he's not necessarily somebody I would want to invest in a keeper or dynasty league.
I like the floor ceiling numbers. So if his ceiling is a 70, meaning he can reach if he reaches his ceiling, it's a 70. Is how does he get there? I guess he gets there if he's a 310 hitter with 25 homers and like somehow he finds power and he
Mm,
keeps his average. Uh Let me ask you this. What So I think I see him and I think like Dave Magadan, Hal
mm,
Morris, Mark Grace, like these left-handed swinging first basemen that were able to run really high on base percentages and not hit for nearly as much power as you would want out of that position. And I know the game has shifted so much to a power game, right? Where OPS is the stat that we're looking at and we understand how to process it better. But I do wonder with some of the changes in the game with the shift and steals and you see a little bit more of the ball remaining in the park. What is the real value of a player like this at a corner position, right? Is it, we've kind of just pushed them into the corner and said they don't have real potential anymore to help a team. But I wonder if the game is shifting in a different direction. If your favorite team had a first baseman like this, would it bother you?
Um, it depends on what the other positions are, right? So,
Mhm.
so it's kind of like whack-a-mole, right? You know are you seem to have a problem solved over here, but then you have a problem over here, or if you solve it over here, it's going to come up in other places. So,
Sure.
um, you know, I think defensively, that will play a role too. I think without the shift anymore, I think first base, defensively kind of goes up a bit for
More
real life
important.
baseball for a
Sure.
GM that's looking at that. So that would play a role, but for fantasy baseball, or for fandom itself, it's just not sexy, right?
Right.
It's just not going to play out. And even if you're a GM and you want to sell seats, is that somebody you want at the corner?
Right.
So yeah, it's interesting. I think you know kind of maybe the old Angel stuff would be cool. Maybe if he could like I know like the Brian Downing types had power, right? And led
Sure.
off, but were slow. But if you had the guys like, DeSense's Jackson, uh,
Mm-hmm.
who else was there? Fred Lynn,
President, yeah.
that were driving in Downing leading off, who Downing, just had average speed. That would
Kendrick.
be kind of cool. That would be kind of fun, with the
Right.
on base percentage, but it's not going to happen now. So,
Right.
um, so that's maybe the only scenario that I would get excited about there.
It's and not to spend like all podcast on Nolan Shanuel, but it's interesting because I've been doing a lot of obviously doing a lot of stuff with the Mariners cast and and Ty France recently, kind of doing research with Ty France. And what's fascinating to me is, France is a little bit of a comp to Shanuel, I think, in terms of statistical comp, and does it in a different way, but doesn't walk nearly as much, hits for a high average. I think Shanuel has a higher OBP potential, but Francis never hit more than 20 home runs in a season. He had 20 home runs in 22, he had 18 and 21, right? So low power output from your starting first baseman, never had a slugging percentage over 468. However, and this is the interesting part to me, his WRC plus from 20 to 22 was 133, 129, 125.
Hmm.
And I think WRC plus is where some of these players who don't fit the prototype can kind of, you can see their value, right? You
Hmm.
can start to understand WRC plus is a metric to help us understand the overall offensive contribution. And
Hmm.
so, if the question is, could Shanuel run a 125 to 130 WRC plus for the next, 6 to 8 years? I
Hmm.
think that answer is yes, he can, right? And so
Hmm.
whether it looks like that or not, or no matter what it looks like, I think there's potential value. I don't want to say I'm coming around on him, and I don't know that I'd be comfortable with him as my fantasy starting first baseman,
Hmm.
but I have him at number 76. I have his risk as low. And I do think that if you have big power at less traditional power positions, right? If you have a Cal Raleigh at catcher, where you're getting 25 to 30 homers, and you have 25 to 30 homers at second base, I do think Shanuel is the kind of player you might be able to play.
Mm,
And he's a great in a league with the corner infield or multiple utility spots. He's a guy who can really boost your average and potentially your runs if he hits at the top of that lineup
mm,
from a first base position. So I don't know, fascinating guy. I'm super interested to see how his career turns out because it's
mm,
clear he can put the bat on the ball.
mhm.
He does have a really good hit tool, right?
Yes.
Um,
Uh-huh.
so we'll see.
Yeah, after watching him in spring thus far, yeah, my hit tool has gone up probably about 5 to 10 with him.
Right.
Just he can place the ball really well,
Yep.
knows his zone really well. We keep going off on him, but if he were on the Dodgers and the Dodgers said we want an on base percentage guy that our guys are going to knock in,
Yep.
he'd be a keeper or a first round pick for me.
Totally.
If I knew he was at the top of that Dodgers lineup, right? It's so he's the type of player too. And I think you were hinting at this when you asked about him on your team or favorite team. If he team context does matter a lot for this type
Yeah,
of.
for sure. Well, and you wonder, like, someone like him, if he hit at the top of that Dodgers lineup and he got on base 39-40% of the time, you're talking about 125 runs,
Mhm.
right? That's what Mookie did.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I do think team context matters. And unfortunately, he plays for the Angels across
Yeah,
town. All right. We may only get through 10 because they might be 20 different players, but that's going to be okay. We'll figure this out.
that's what makes this fun, especially
Exactly.
everybody talks about what's on the top of our list, right?
Right. My number 100 is because I had to keep him on this list, despite what everybody is saying, and I think he's not being seen for what he is, which is one of the youngest players, American players in minor league baseball, and it's Cam Collier. Cam Collier was third baseman, Cincinnati Reds organization. Collier was a mid first round pick of the Reds in 22. He is only 18 years old. He was drafted as a 17-year-old. He played junior college ball like Bryce Harper did before at 16 years old. So he plays an A ball, 390 plate appearances, 40 runs, 6 homers, 68 RBIs, kind of, 705 OPS, walks. His OBP is 103 points over his average, but he hit the ball on the ground a ton and he wasn't lifting. He's hitting the ball hard, but he wasn't lifting. And he's fallen off of everybody's lists. And which I find fascinating because did you really expect a 17-year-old to walk into professional baseball and just destroy professional baseball? Like, and he's a bigger bodied guy too. So it's not like he can let his athleticism really take over, right? He's strong and he's an offensive profile, but it's like Xavier Isaac, but 2 years younger essentially. And I hate to do same race comp, but that's the big lefty swinging corner guy that came to mind at first. I still love Collier. I still think that Collier has the potential to be a top notch third baseman, right? There's still 280, 290, and 30 home runs in his bat. He just happened to take some time to adjust in A ball last season. So he's my number 100. I will always keep an eye on him to see his development. I do imagine he may end up at first base. If you see clips of him, he's a big dude, right?
Mm.
Big, thick, big butt, big hips, like, and you see where the power comes from. But he also has a little hitch in his swing right now that I think needs to get smoothed out a bit. But I do believe in his talent and his offensive upside.
Mhm.
Do you have Collier on your list?
Yes, I do. I have him at 83.
And
So,
any additional thoughts on Collier from you?
um, just a sense of in building a dynasty or even a keeper team, there's these players that come in really young, like you mentioned, that maybe have one bad year and then they're just taken off lists, right? Um, so he's one of those. So we're just gonna cross out all, we could go back and look at um baseball prospectus, baseball America, and look at the paragraphs about him in high praise.
Right.
So I just don't believe that we should just cross out all those paragraphs after,
For 1 year.
1 year in the minors and at that age
Yep.
too, right? Yeah, so he's a great investment, and I have no problem investing in Cincinnati Reds players.
Offensive players,
Cincinnati is
absolutely.
it's the new Colorado, right?
Hmm.
Park factors, it's number one for hitting, especially for power. And he's a lefty, that right field porch.
Right.
You could hit a fly ball out there and get a home run. So,
Right.
so yeah, he's definitely worth the investment for me.
Who's 99 for you?
99, we talked about him last week, so I went high. The last player in Shanuel was high floor, low ceiling. This is high ceiling, low floor. So this
Mhm.
is Ariarte with the San Diego Padres
Mhm.
starting pitcher. Maybe some people have already labeled him as potential reliever. I just like the upside of his stuff. His stuff moves a lot. We talked a lot even before we got on here as far as fastball shape. He has a fastball that with tons of movement that he could have as his foundation and then move out from there.
Mhm.
Talked about his stats last week, what he's shown. His Ks were almost double once he went to double A versus his innings pitched.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just like him a lot. I really love what San Diego's doing. They should have done this a long time ago as far as building their constructing their roster around their park, which is a great park for pitching. So yeah, he's a great guy to keep an eye on as far as what he does this year.
I like him. I also think there's value even in a redraft, but specifically in Dynasty, there's value in investing in him this year because, if he is a reliever early on and a dominant one potentially, then you can put him in the SPRP role because he'll be listed likely as an SPRP once he starts relieving. So there's value there too. I don't have anything to add on Iriarte, but I do agree with the sentiment about the Padres. Build around pitching, have a couple of stars offensively, build around pitching and defense, and supplement the rest of your offense with some speed and some hit tool.
Hmm. Do you
Nine,
have him on your list?
I don't, but it wasn't, um, I wasn't, it's not a knock on him. I just think I've got a lot of, let's see, probably 25 pitchers on my list or so.
Hmm.
Um, and I think all deserving. But he was right. He'd be right afterwards for me. 99 for me is Chase Davis, left-handed swinging power hitting outfielder, corner outfielder. In the Cardinals organization, he was drafted by or was drafted out of University of Arizona last season. Low first round pick, just big power potential. Don't have a ton to add. He's a great athlete. Uh, Lots of swing and miss. There's a lot of worries about whether he's ever going to pan out, but I think he's kind of the ultimate boom or bust type of candidate or type of player who you could see him, you could conceivably see him hitting 35 home runs and you could see him never getting past double A. Um, just a slugger out and out. Do you have Chase Davis on your list?
I do not know, but I like the idea of having these ceiling guys with power here.
Mhm.
You never know how or when that light's going to turn on.
Right. And it's dynasty. And if you're at the bottom of a top 100, you can go look for I don't know, let me look at this list. Somebody boring who might give you 15-15, like the way I see Jackson Merrill, right? As a prospect. I don't think Jackson Merrill has superstar upside. You can go pay for a guy like that, or you can take a guy at the bottom of your top 100 who you think has superstar potential, but you're not investing nearly as much as you would in a top prospect. Who do you have at 98?
98, I have one. He's probably higher on some lists. I have Kyle Teal at 98, first round pick Boston Red Sox last year, 14th overall. Some say that was even pretty low for him, comparatively so. To me, he's a type of player that looks good in real life. Somebody, if I was a Red Sox fan, I'd be totally psyched about as leading that team behind the plate. I think his value goes up if he is going to bat second or at the top of that lineup, because he is somebody with a great hit tool, with good on base skills, great recognition of the strike zone, just the type of player you want as a catcher. Like Shanuel, I have questions about how hard he hits it, and how many home runs he's going to hit as a catcher. Kind of have a little bit of a bias in wanting more power at the catcher position. So, yeah, so that's where I have Teal at 98. But if he ends up at 2 in the Boston lineup, and that Boston lineup is something where you have Devers and somebody protecting Devers, and they build it well. I could see him definitely rising on my board. Just I don't like Devers being protected right now by Trevor Story. I just want to see them continue to develop the youth, and if he's going to develop along with them, he'd be a solid catcher. But to me, he's not like that elite top 5 catcher that I would want in fantasy baseball.
I'm at 60. I think I see a little more upside in his game than maybe you do. He has the ability to go oppo and to hit the ball to left field. And I think any left-handed hitter on the Red Sox that can hit the ball to left field in the air has the potential to be very successful. And so to me, his upside is, I think he can get to 280. I think I like his hit tool. I think it's above average. It's not plus, but it's above average. And I do think there's, say, 20 home runs in his bat, right? Something like that. So if he's able to take walks and he's able to hit let's say 280, and his OPS is right around 800, an 800 OPS with 20 home runs is in the range of, Sean Murphy had 21 homers and the 844 OPS, but part of it was because they limited his exposure. Let's see, Will Smith had 19 home runs and a 794 OPS, and people are tripping over each other trying to pick Will Smith all the time. JT Realmuto, 20 home runs, 762 OPS. So I think with catcher, for me at least, if you can take that one small jump from like average to above average, right? If you can go from 14 to 20 home runs and from 250 to 280, I think that's a huge jump at catcher. That the next step up is incrementally looks very different than other positions. And so I don't know. I like Teal a lot. I'm excited to see him play. And I do think if he does kind of understand how to hit the ball off that wall, it might be 40 doubles and 16 homers, but an OPS of 820 because of those doubles. I see that in him potentially. Let's see. My next, I bet you're going to have him higher than me, but I do like him as a prospect, is two-way player drafted by the Giants last draft. It's Bryce Eldridge. I have him as a first baseman. I think initially they were going to try him in right field. He's got a great arm as a two-way guy, can throw mid to high 90s. But from what I've heard, they're going to leave him at first base and try to keep him there long term. You won't reap any rewards from Bryce Eldridge probably until at least 2027. It's going to be a slow burn, 6'7", long levers, really interesting dude. But light tower power, right? Like pretty left-handed swing, powerful left-handed swing. I would say he has like 70 grade power potential, right? His raw is probably a 70. And obviously, if he can get to even a 65, you're talking about a 30 home run, left-handed swinging first baseman for the Giants for a long time. So it's early with him. I tend to be pretty aggressive with younger guys, but I do think that Bryce Eldridge is is a really good investment a really good power investment at this point in time.
Mhm.
Do you have him on your list?
Yeah, I have him at 78,
Mhm.
so I'm not too far off. I actually upped him after the Giants committed to him being the one-way player. I think that's where his future lies, and my caution about him was him being distracted by the two-way thing.
Right.
So with that porch in rights, the classic lefty, hitting it into the water there, that's how I envision him. The issue is with his levers, is he going to be K'ing a lot with that long lefty swing, and how can the Giants develop him, right?
Right.
So I'll be watching him very carefully, because he could be that 30 plus home run first baseman for the future for the Giants, but it's going to take a while to develop him. And like we've said before in the past, with players that are athletic, that are moving to one position, they have a really high ceiling from where they are now to the future, because they really haven't concentrated and developed those skills yet. So if he already has decent power skills, it's interesting to see how that ceiling is developed.
Mhm. What do you have at 97?
At 97, I have this one. So I went floor, ceiling, floor with teal, and this is high ceiling, low floor. So I have Omart Martinez with Toronto Blue Jays. A player that hits the crap out of the ball, has elite EVs, but also has elite K in the opposite direction, right? But it seems like Toronto is continuing to invest in him. He's playing in the spring at, I think he's played second, playing second, third. He's a type of player that could that could rise up the charts if he gets the K thing under control. But again, that's a huge if for me. So yeah, and again, park factor with Toronto is something I like too. So he's a player I've had an eye on for a long time. He was signed by them out of the Dominican at age 17. Um, I just, why he's at the bottom of the list is, they've invested plenty in him, and I still see a lot of swing and miss.
Mhm.
It's kind of like the Luciano light, right? As far as that goes, as somebody that everybody was attracted to because he's hitting the crap out of the ball when they started to develop him. But I just don't see any further development. So at max, he could be a somebody that hits 30 home runs, but he's going to bat 230, right?
Mhm.
So that's his ceiling there.
I don't have him on my top 100. I didn't, for anybody listening, I did not have him in my top 100, in part because I didn't want to talk about him, because it's somebody I have an eye on for this upcoming year. So Orelvis Martinez is interesting because he had like zero plate discipline until last year. He was a player that we all knew could hit. He hit 30 home runs in 22 in AA, and he hit
Mhm.
203, right?
Yeah.
But what's interesting about him is everything that I've read says that he, for the first time in 23, he actually took seriously the feedback and the teachings from the Blue Jays about plate discipline. And he brought in AA, he brought his K rate down to 20.5, and his walk rate was 14%. And he still only hit 226, but he became a better player in general. And his
Mhm.
power is evident, right? 17 homers and 292 plate appearances in AA last season. And
Mhm.
then in triple, it was 11 homers and 246 plate appearances. So I think he's starting to mature his plate approach is starting to mature. And he's starting to realize that the previous plate approach isn't going to allow him to play in the major leagues. And so to me, it's cool to see that happen. And I think that the talent and the power has always been there. So Orelvis Martinez this year he starts at second base for the Blue Jays. Now he's
Mhm.
got second and probably second and third base eligibility. I don't know what he reads as on Fantrax now, I'm assuming it's short or third. And then he has second base eligibility. And if he ends up actually playing, getting regular time at second, he could hit 25 home runs. He's not going to hit 260, but he could be 230 with 25 home runs, right?
Mhm.
So there's value in him. And I think that what's interesting is there's more upside with Aurelvis Martinez than a lot of the other middle infielders on this list. He just happens to his floor can completely, it could be a hole in his floor and he can go, all the way down to not being in baseball anymore.
Mhm.
Are you looking up his position right now?
Yeah, I'm looking on Fantrax right now to see what he's eligible for.
Sweet.
Um,
So I'll move on to 97 while you're looking. Uh my number 97, do you find it?
yeah.
What is it?
This has
Util? Of
a lot to do with your strategy, huh? He's shortstop eligible right now.
course he is. Yes, 100%.
The
Um,
last thing I wanted to add about that too, it is interesting in hearing from Toronto about their plans. So your favorite player, what's his name? The guy with the mustache, Schneider. Um,
who?
with Davis Schneider, is that his
Oh,
name?
that guy, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody in the fantasy world was saying, well, he's going to be second base for them, but Toronto manager just said no. It appears that they are committed to Martinez, and Martinez could be up at second base this year.
Right. Well, and think about this, right? So if you look at some of the other shortstop prospects that are higher up on lists, the one that comes to mind for me is, we talk a lot about Carson Williams, right?
Mm.
Carson Williams was my number 4 shorts, and I'm guilty of this as well. Carson Williams is my number 4 shortstop prospect. Carson Williams' upside is like 250 average in the majors and 25 home runs. That's his
Hmm.
upside, right? It's not, we're not, Carson Williams is not a 270 hitter unless he makes major
Hmm.
changes, but it's power speed. Now, Relvis doesn't give you the 20 steals that Carson Williams may, but Relvis has probably at minimum a half grade higher uh, raw power than Carson Williams does, maybe a full grade. It might be 65 from Relvis or even set close to 70 and 55, 60 from Carson Williams. So I think he's someone who's fallen off the radar. I think there's a lot of prospect fatigue with him. And because he hits for such a low average, there's a lot of criticism, but Robes Martinez is great. Again, I did, for those who listen, hopefully not many in our league, I did very much leave him off because he's a guy that I am eyeballing late in the draft.
Uh, yeah, I'm really curious about the left side of your infield there. And when I look at players like this, I wonder if they're on your list.
100%, they all are. They all are. But I do think that it'll get addressed before I get to the Aurelvis Martinez pick. I think the Aurelvis Martinez pick is the lottery ticket, that if he blows up, then I've got a really good player there instead of an average player.
Mhm.
Yeah, that should be fun. And you're assuming I'm not keeping a shortstop or a third baseman.
Yeah, we'll see on Monday.
We will see on Monday. If I think if I had any doubt, just to tangentially, if I had any sort of hesitation with Termar Johnson, his 2 homers in that game on a 96 mile an hour fastball from Jimmy Garcia at his eyeballs and a same side left-handed slider from Genesis Cabrera that he hit both out for home runs. There was no more hesitation with Termar. Termar was on the keeper list after that. And to me, that's an example though of like, just if you believe in a dude's talent, just believe in his talent. Who cares what they do in single A, right? If
Mm.
the guy is talented and that's your scouting grade on him, like why give up on somebody after a half a year or a year, or because their production is shaped different than what you expected it to be at 18 years old? I think it's crazy.
Mhm.
I love how everyone was swinging from Tamar Johnson's nuts after he hit 2 home runs like that too, after trashing him all off season.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
funny on Twitter to see the evolution of retweets of podcasters who really weren't high on him and then all of a sudden are. And I think the starting tweet came out with the starting tweet was by Just Baseball, who was one of the few sites that did stick with him.
Hmm.
And then everybody was
Jumping on
retweeting.
that bandwagon.
Yeah.
Like y'all are punks. You're putting like, who are some of the examples of guys that are putting above me? It wasn't Nick York, but it was like those types of dudes. Like, come on, man. We could go somewhere with that. I don't know. I'll forever be I'll live and die on the with Tamar Johnson.
uh,
All right, my next
Well,
dude.
I should have taken the picture of when you offered him in a trade. It was the shock of the year so far.
Yeah, but
You did turn it down.
tell the listeners who I offered him for.
Yeah, it was Yuri Perez, but
Right.
I don't know. But players like that, I don't know. There's that funny thing about fantasy baseball. It's like your good friend breaks up with a girlfriend and then you start dating the girlfriend. I would just kind of feel like that. Even if I accepted that trade, it just would feel weird. I don't know.
Right. Tamar might end up on my team anyways, eventually. I agree. That's what's most fun too about a home league is there's so much history in a
Uh,
home league and certain prospects or certain guys, players, and they look weird on a different team, and you don't get that in a redraft, right? But you get that in a home dynasty league, which is fun. 97 for me is AJ Smith-Shawver, the right-handed starting pitching prospect for the Braves. I'm not as high on Smith-Shawver as a lot of others are. I think he throws really hard, and he's got obviously really, really good stuff. They called him up as kind of a surprise last season. I think was he 20 when they called him up, something like that. Um, but he needs secondaries, right? And he needs some help with the secondaries to get to where he wants to go. And I think with the Braves too, I wonder honestly, like, is he going to have an opportunity to really shine on that team because they're so set at so many positions. I wonder what his future actually is. I could see him being a dominant reliever and the Braves not caring that he's a reliever because they have so much pitching. So we'll see what happens with him. But I think his fastball alone puts him on this list, albeit towards the bottom. I'm just not as high on him as I think some others are. Do you have
yeah.
Smith Shawver on your list?
No, I do not. I
What's your
didn't like what I
reasoning?
saw last year. I don't know he to me again. My starting pitching strategy is always evolving and volatile, but I don't see him as an SP1, SP2, and those are the ones I want to go after here. So that's why I would have an Iriarte there because I think he has his stuff speaks SP2, SP1 in a pitcher's park.
Right.
Um, Whereas Shaver, I think he's great because I probably would draft him, but as far as investing in a pitcher in Dynasty, no. But he's not far off my list.
Right.
I think I'm with you that if you're on a list, he would be in this area for me.
Right. And I trust BP is one of the sites that I enjoy and I trust, and some of the stuff they said about him in terms of him being an arm speed guy, right? And a command guy, but without, because he has tons of velocity, but the characteristics of his pitches are not great. I think
Hmm.
we've learned, not to go too far the other way, but I think we've learned so much about pitch design and pitch shape recently that we know that a Joe Ryan 92-mile-an-hour fastball is more effective than, even a Hunter Green 102-mile-an-hour fastball because of the shape of the pitch, right? It was so telling watching Bryce Miller throw 70%, 80% fastballs and starts at the beginning of his career with the Mariners, but the fastball at 95, 96 miles an hour, but the shape of the fastball was so elite that he was getting away with one pitch against major league hitters and had the greatest first 5 starts of any rookie pitcher of all time. And so those things are telling to me about fastball shape. And so when I hear scouts say, big velocity on the fastball, but I don't know about the shape, it really does give me pause, right? It's I'm thinking about bringing Paul Skeens down 1 or 2 ranks amongst my starting pitchers because of the fastball shape. And not because Skeens has done anything different in the last month, but because as I learn more about those things, I tend to reshape how I see how I'm evaluating skills, right? And so I think Smith Shower falls in that category. That's why he's lower on my list than a lot of others, and obviously off yours. Who do you have at 96?
At 96, you like this one because he's a former local guy on I'm not sure if he's on your list, but Gabriel Gonzalez. He's up and down between 50 and 100 on a lot of lists. I actually do like him in Minnesota better than in Seattle. I think they'll play to his pull side. They'll play into his pull side power. Still quite young as a player. What is he? He is
19.
19 years old. He just turned 20, January 4th, 2004. So still a young player. I love these type of players that not necessarily for a keeper, but maybe for a dynasty, especially in a points league that's going to give you great plate discipline, decent contact. He's a somebody that could bat around 280, hit 20 home runs, steal 10 bases.
Mm-hmm.
That's great if your points league has 5 outfielders and he's your 5th outfielder. So he's going back and forth between floor and ceiling. He's this high floor outfielder that I have no problem investing in. I have no problem with the way Minnesota develops players. I just hope they just seem to have a curse with their players getting hurt, their prospects getting hurt. But I like to see how he continues to develop. I think sometimes because he was so he caught the attention of everybody when he did sign with the Mariners.
Mm-hmm.
He has a little bit of prospect fatigue here, and so it's to me, even honestly, I had fatigue, and I didn't realize how young he still is.
Right.
So yeah, I like him a lot. He's somebody that I think potentially with his floor can move up the board, move up my board. He did struggle a little bit once he went to high A, so he was killing it in Modesto, 348 batting average, 403 on base percentage, 530 slug, 933 OPS. He struggled once he got to better pitching in high A. I want to see what's going to happen once he goes to double A, where the pitching even gets better. But still, you're talking about a 19-year-old that was at high A, and this year you'll be talking about a 20-year-old that's at double A.
Right.
So yeah, I have him on my watch list and wanting to see what happens and what Minnesota does with him.
Mm-hmm. I agree with just about everything you said. I think I have him at 79. Um, the one thing with Gonzalez, the reason why I think the Mariners traded him, and the reason why I'm hesitant with him is the profile is a difficult one to get behind, right? It's a right-handed hitting corner outfielder with no potential to play anywhere else. That is kind of heavy-footed, meaning he's not going to offer you stolen bases, and he doesn't take a ton of walks, right? It's like a bigger, stronger version of some of the guys you see on the Giants, right? Like, so hit tool, good power. I think he has potential 60 hit, 60 power, which on the surface looks good. But like in our league, in an OPS league, if he's hitting 25 homers and he's hitting 270, but he's got like a 5% walk rate, you're talking about like a 780 OPS, something like that, which makes him an outfield 3 at his peak with no steals to speak of. And he has to hit in the right part of the lineup to give you runs and RBIs. So I like him as a player. I think as a real life player, he makes sense for the Twins. He would have been nice, for the Mariners in a corner outfield spot. But from a fantasy perspective, he's got to hit he legitimately has to hit 25, 30 home runs to have value in fantasy. My ranking says I think he will, at least at his peak. And the Twins are maybe the best organization at teaching hitters how to lift and pull. And I think that's at the expense of a lot of other skills. But it'll be interesting to see what happens with Gonzalez now that he's been traded. But that profile is scary. Right-handed hitting, slow, and doesn't take a walk is a scary profile for me, unless he's playing like third base or shortstop or something like that. My 96 is Ryan Clifford, first base prospect, New York Mets. Was traded with Drew Gilbert as the top two prospects of the Astros at the time for Justin Verlander at the deadline or midseason last season. Clifford has power. He's got a lot of power, 24 homers in 423 plate appearances last season in A and high A ball. But that came with 140 strikeouts. I think the question with Clifford, there's no question about whether he has power. I think he's going to be a first baseman. I think there's 25 to 30 home run power in that bat. The real question is it too much swing and miss? You can say this about a lot of guys. I do think it's telling that that he was a top prospect in the Astros organization. They were willing to trade him for Verlander. I don't know if it says more about the Astros minor league system or about the fact that Clifford may not be a top prospect, probably a little bit of both. And I don't particularly love the Mets development system. So I think Clifford is probably a slow burn, and he could be Matt Mervis, quad A Ryan Clifford, but he could also, like I said, hit 25 to 30 homers. Do you have him on your list?
No, I do not.
Okay.
I do have him on my list. And I have the same amount of caution when it comes to the Mets, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the very fact that somebody as talented with a quick bat as Beatty, they weren't able to develop him. And it seems like this year they're all of a sudden changing, some approaches to his swing. He's a righty thrower, lefty hitter,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, oh, we just realized that there's going to be problems with the high fastball or how he turns on pitches.
Right.
Well, he should have known that a while back.
Right.
So Bush is the same way, but the Dodgers knew that when Bush came up and they helped develop him because lefty wasn't his natural swing.
Right.
But Mets had a player at 24 doing that. So yeah, I'm not very confident in their system right now.
Me neither. Who's your next guy?
My next guy is somebody that could be maybe a pop-up, but I have forgiveness when it comes to
Von Brown?
nope, whether they're this is a player that plays first base. So all first basemen are pop-ups. So Abimelech Ortiz, I have here. I like what Texas has been able to do recently in developing players. It's tough to argue with his performance here. He in high A and in single A overall, he batted 294, 371 on base percentage, 619 slug, 990 OPS, 33 home runs, 101 RBIs. What makes me a little more confident in him in not being a pop-up, besides the talent here with his, what his under the hood, the EVs show, is he had a nice showing in Arizona Fall League as well, 314, 460, 600, so OPS over 1,000. But what impressed me the most in the Arizona Fall League is 12 walks and 8 strikeouts. So he's not kind of this Nelson Velasquez, who I think was the MVP of Arizona Fall League a couple years ago, that hit all the home runs, but K'd tons of times. This is somebody that's showing a sense of the strike zone and contact. So I have a keen eye on him. He's somebody who can rise up a lot or fall a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So he's another one on my watch list here at the end of the list.
I don't have him on my list. He's a fun player. He's shorter, bigger dude. I think could be boom or bust. Yeah, I certainly think you could see 25 home runs from him, and he's a pretty good hitter, right? Or you could never see, he's like a circus, you know, guy performing tricks in AAA for the rest of his life. I don't know. But I like it. I think that's what the bottom of this list is for, is taking risks like that. 95 for me is Jace Young, not to be confused with C Young. Um, Jace Young is the now third base prospect for the Tigers. Was drafted as a second baseman. I think his future home is third base, with Colt Keith taking over at second in Detroit. Jace Young is the brother of Josh Young in Texas, and the half brother of C Young. Left-handed hitter, got to Double A last year. Big swing. 28 homers, 486 plate appearances. There's a lot of swing and miss. 139 strikeouts in those 486 plate appearances. I think a similar profile to his brother in some ways, but left-handed, and at came up as a second baseman. He did walk a decent amount, over 100 points higher OPS than average, but not a player that I love, but I think a player who will end up being a major league regular and will probably not be a starting fantasy third baseman, but just on the cusp. That's kind of where I project him. I could see 260, 20 home runs. Some people loving him, depending on where he hits in the lineup. His runs and RBIs will go up and down, but not a star, not a guy that you will come to really prioritize in redrafts. So not my cup of tea, but a player that I think will probably be up at some point with the Tigers this season, and probably starts at third base opening day 2025. You have Jace Young on your list.
I do not, but he's one that was on the threshold. I do like his profile. He has that interesting swing.
Mm-hmm.
I think is funny to have that brother comp, right? But that's what it is. His brother came up as a player who is more hits over power, contact. Young was the same way, and then flipped more towards power bat, less hit, just like his brother. So yeah, the only caution for me is the Detroit thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that does need to be considered, right? It's a really rough park to hit in, no matter what your talent is. Like Jace Young as a Cincinnati Reds prospect, what would you think of him? I
Oh
think
yeah.
he'd be probably 20 notches higher, right? You'd be talking about him as having 30 home run potential. But on this Detroit team, I don't really know. I don't want to overblow the park, but I think those are two extremes. Who's next for you?
This is somebody that was high on this last year, but fell off this year. I don't think it's fair because he was hurt most of last year. So I have Drew Jones at 94 here.
Mhm.
Um, Again, he's one of these players that if we look at the write-ups last year, if we look at what the scouts say, should we completely give up on him, right? He's no Christian Pache with huge K problems. I think Pache even got in top 10 on a lot of lists early. And he was there because of his defense. And Jones is there largely because first his defense. He does have the pedigree with his father. He has the lightning speed, so I like speed guys. He doesn't have a low hit tool, I don't think. He has decent
Mhm.
power as well. What I like about him is, again, comparing him maybe to somebody that I confess I had high last year that is not panning out, is Green with the Nationals. Green wasn't hurt all last year. I think when Jones got healthy, he was showing decent numbers at the end of last year. So he's somebody that I'm going to have a keen eye on as far as what it looks like. I think if you could buy him really low in a dynasty league, I think it's worth a shot just
Right.
based on his talent.
So we get points for defense then? Is that what you're saying? For me with him, it's a obviously pedigree play, right? Former number two pick. Andrew Jones is his dad. Um, I don't like what I've seen thus far. I don't know if he'll get strong enough to hit for power, and we just haven't really seen anything. And so if I think if you believed in his talent before the draft, you can justify having him in your top 100. If you didn't believe in it, there's no reason to really have him there. I'm out on Andrew Jones. It's not to say that he's not going to be a good player. It's just I would have to see a year or two of health and a year or two of production, right? You're looking for both of those things before he's actually a productive player. I'll leave him to be traded for by other managers in our league. My next player, number 94, is Carson Wisenhunt, left-handed starting pitcher in the San Francisco Giants organization. I think he will be up with the Giants at some point this season. Good fastball, beautiful changeup, right? Like probably right up there, almost to the level of like a Dylan Lesko changeup, but from the left side. I do like the way the Giants develop pitching. I think they're really interesting. The reason why I've had Wisenhunt higher in the past. I had him, I think, in the 50s, maybe in my initial top 100 this offseason. I worry more about, I'll call it the Gavin Stone effect. Players or pitchers whose first secondary is a changeup make me nervous. And I think it's easier to be changeup heavy as a lefty than it is as a righty. And I really do like Wisenhunt's stuff, and he's got a really nice fastball as well. So it is fastball changeup for sure. And you're looking for that next pitch. And obviously the park is a great park to pitch in. So there are a lot of things to like about Wisenhunt. I don't know if he's much more than a number 3 at best in a big league rotation, but I do think that he will give, a decent amount of innings, and his strikeout rate, I'm guessing, will stay somewhere in the mid 20s, maybe low to mid 20s, but isn't going to walk the park, isn't going to, he's someone not to be scared of. I think he's a safe play as a starter in Dynasty, and I like him a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like Wisenhunt a lot as well. He's not on my list, but I think he was in debate as being in this range. I think he ended up like at 103, 102. So yeah, I like him a lot. I like his park. I like how Giants deal with pitchers. I think he does have SP2 upside if everything comes together, especially in that park. So yeah, and the combination of his pitches with the off speed with the changeup is something that I think is to keep a keen eye on as far as how that combo develops.
He's fun, and I'm not a Giants fan, but I'm excited to see what they do with he and Harrison, right? You've got two really exciting left-handed pitching prospects, but they do it in really different ways. And I think that's actually some of the secret sauce of the Giants, I think, is to not have one type of pitcher. You see a really diverse group of pitchers and style of pitcher in their organization. And I'm starting to wonder whether that's actually intentional on their part. Because you've got some splitters, you've got some fastball shape guys, you've got some veterans, you've got Junis going 4 innings at a time last season with a bunch of sliders, right? It's like all sorts of stuff coming at you. Real quick. So not over the course of a lot of innings, but some of the strikeout percentages from Wisenhunt: 70, 35, 35-1, 38-3, and 32-1 have been his strikeout percentages so far. And he has made it to Double-A. And I think, if I'm remembering correctly, I think he dropped in the draft to the second round because of injury concerns more than anything else. It wasn't about talent. He was definitely a potential first-round pick. So Carson Wisenhunt, maybe I should have ranked him higher. I've got him at 94, but I've got my eye on him. Who do you have at number 93?
I have Enrique Bradfield with the Baltimore Orioles. He's one of a couple of speedsters I have here. I like what I've seen so far in spring, especially when it comes to his speed. He really moves. I like what Baltimore does with their players, how they develop hitters. Is he going to be that speed power guy? No. Speed contact guy, yes. Speed eye guy can be. So, obviously there's the defense thing there too with center field, but I like how he's gonna be positioned in Baltimore. Baltimore could take his time with him, and with the new SB rules, which I think the new stolen base rules um yeah, have been quickly forgotten. It's kind of funny. It's almost like new rules fatigue, right? And we forget how much this affected things last year and how much this affects the value of speedsters. So I could see him as a high OBP guy in an organization that develops that well, with lightning speed, with 75, 80 grade speed.
He's really interesting for me because I think there are a number of yes, no questions that if they toggle the right way, you're looking at a really ridiculous fantasy player, right? And I think
Uh-huh.
he's the type of player who might be more valuable fantasy wise than in real life. But
Hmm.
the first, my first thought is so he first round pick out of Vanderbilt, center fielder through and through, 80 grade speed, like legit 80 grade speed. So the first question is ultimately when he makes it to the major leagues, where is he hitting?
Hmm.
Because he's either hitting first or he's hitting ninth.
Yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of in between, maybe eighth, right? And so the fantasy difference between hitting first or ninth is, according to Eno Saris, every place in the batting order is worth like 10 plate appearances essentially over the course of the season. So if you're off the top, he's hitting ninth. It's minus 80 plate appearances from his stat line, right? That's a huge thing. You're talking about like 15% of the player's opportunity to put up stats lopped off the top by hitting ninth. So there's that for one. For two, and I think probably the biggest thing, it's the question everybody asks, is he going to hit for any sort of power? Because the difference between Enrique Bradfield hitting 5 home runs and hitting ninth and stealing 60 bags versus Bradfield hitting leadoff and hitting 12 home runs and stealing 60 bags is probably 30 runs, right? Plus a bunch of other stuff. So I think that the question of where he hits in the lineup and probably most importantly, is he going to hit for any semblance of power? It's why everyone's on Victor Scott right now. Everyone's on Victor Scott the second because they realize he hits the ball really hard and he may have 12 to 15 home run potential. Victor Scott, Victor Scott, Victor Scott. I know. But that's the difference, right? That is literally the difference between rosterable and an asset versus Esteury Ruiz. The other thing I was going to add is I think Esteury Ruiz has soured people on speed only types of players. And just the assumption is now between he and Billy Hamilton and some of the others, the assumption is now if you're a speed only guy, you're not of value, right? Or you're not of value that we thought you were going to be. But I think with someone like Bradfield, there is potential to hit 10 home runs. And that would make or better said, potential to hit the ball into left center field in Baltimore and have 15 triples, right? 15 triples is still a huge boost to your OPS. So I like Bradfield a lot. Like I said, he's at 74 for me. I think the arrow is up. And I think he is a good example of the payoff. If you take the risk, the payoff with the player like Bradfield could be absolutely enormous. He could literally win the steals category for you in a roto league, and I think could be a huge asset, especially if you have a lot of power in a head to head.
Mm-hmm.
That was your 93.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Christian Scott, right-handed starting pitcher out of the University of Florida in the New York Mets organization, as my number 93. Scott found some velocity and has a really nice changeup now. He's kind of a high riser for on a lot of lists. I think he's fastball, slider, changeup at this point. He's had some durability issues. I don't know that he's going to be a horse necessarily, but I could see him as at his peak as a high strikeout number 3 starter. I've seen some people want to treat him like Bryce Miller or Brian Wu going into last year. I don't think he has that kind of skill or talent, and I don't think he's those guys, but he's somebody to keep an eye on. I do think that there's value in Christian Scott. Do you have anything to add with him?
Who are you talking about?
Christian Scott, the right-handed starting pitcher.
I'm giving you a bad time.
Oh, why'd you say that?
I'm somebody that's going into the draft looking for all pitchers, right? So yeah. So yeah, I like him a lot. I not as a SP2, SP1 type of pitcher. That's why he's not on my list. But he is that SP3 guy that you could have at the back of your rotation. Even this year, I think he'll be up early, especially with some of the Mets injuries. I like the way the Mets develop pitchers compared to hitters. I think that's their, at least historically, has been their strength.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he's a, I think maybe in dynasty leagues he's not an under the radar guy anymore, but in keepers leagues he is. So I think he's, to me, he's the 50 floor, 50 ceiling type of guy
Mm-hmm.
that I would want to snag in a keeper draft.
I don't know why the Mets just make me scared. I am scared of anybody coming out of the Mets organization in a lot of ways.
Mm.
It doesn't mean it's founded in anything. I'm hesitant. Who's that 92 for you?
At 92 is George Lombard Jr., son of the batting coach for Detroit Tigers, former player. I like how he is showing right now. He's obviously getting a lot of press because he had a home run in spring, and he is a Yankee, right? But
Mm-hmm.
he was the youngest person in the draft. I think he's born 2005. Um, I think he's somebody that has the grades across the board that are above average. I think BA has him at 55 across the board. Decent speed, decent hit, decent power. Just want to see how he fills out and how that develops. He's listed as 6'3", 190 now. He could be bigger. He could move to third because of that as he grows. I just like the pedigree here. He's certainly not a spring pop-up. He's somebody that has tons of talent as a young guy that I'm gonna watch very closely.
He his dad was buff and strong.
Uh,
You can see his son potentially filling out and being a third baseman or being playing in the outfield even. And I think sometimes we don't acknowledge the pure like DNA being passed down in the way that maybe we should. Although when I think about it, like obviously Vladdy doesn't look like his dad necessarily. I guess his dad has gained some weight over time, but other players, like I think about projecting Jackson Holiday. Right? I think Jackson Holiday becomes stronger and stronger, and that's part of why I think he plays second eventually instead of third. Or think about Ken Griffey Jr., right? Ken Griffey Jr. didn't look like his dad when he played because he was a little bit more fit than his dad was at the end of his career. But Griffey got bigger as he got older, like his dad did. Now he's back in better shape. But the point is that I think you can project at times. And you look at someone like George Lombard Jr. and you look at his dad and you realize this dude's probably going to grow off a shortstop because he's going to be a pretty strong dude. Um,
and for me, he's the, let's see if I'm looking at my 90 through 100. if I were to say fast riser,
Mhm,
somebody that I wouldn't be shocked that just jumps up the list, it would be him
mhm,
in this range here.
mhm. If I knew your strategy about with regards to starting pitching, I would have put a lot more starting pitching prospects that are close to the majors on my list before our draft. Uh,
Yeah, I didn't like the last one.
and then tell everybody to
You weren't
listen.
doing me any favors with the last one.
I should just change my list right now on the fly, just to do that. Start all starting pitchers. Speaking of, I do have a starting pitcher as my next guy on the list. It's Luis Morales, right-handed starting pitching prospect for the Oakland Athletics. Uh, I think you and I are probably like, I feel like we're like the two dudes that are on Luis Morales, like around. Um, 4 pitches, big mid to high 90s fastball, good shape on the fastball. Um, the top international signee as a pitcher, what, 2 years ago, I think. Um, Still working on his secondaries, but I think the slider is looking really good. Of course, he probably has a 22-year-old pitching coach who was hired off the street, in Oakland right now because the organization is so bad. But Morales has a lot of talent, and I think that he's a player that, because we forget about the A's and we don't trust the A's, is not talked about nearly as much. But I really like him a lot, and I think there's a lot of upside there. I think he has SP2 potential, and as long as they continue to play in that huge park, and you've got SP2 potential with the high 90s fastball in great shape, that's a good place to start. So I've got him at 92.
Hmm. Yeah, I have him at 80.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Anything to
love.
add with him?
Not really. I think we talked about him extensively last week,
Mhm.
but I think what we're learning, and it's a broken record now, is do these players have a fastball that has shape that they could work off of? And he's another one of these high ceiling players that does.
Yep, absolutely. Let's cut it off at 91, after 91. Otherwise, I think we'll be here till sun up tomorrow. But I love it, and it's fun, and I think
Uh,
it's super interesting. Who is your last contribution to the list?
Yeah, I hate to end with this one because this is a player that I don't think um you necessarily like from our discussion last week. And he's somebody that not that you don't like players, but you think is overrated, I should
Mhm,
say. But he needs to be on this list as far as potential goes. He's SP3, SP2 potential, so it's Noble Meyer. We've talked a lot about him. I think it's fair to place him here as probably as the youngest pitcher, at least in the first round, coming into Miami. I'm interested to see how they develop him.
mhm,
Some people have him higher ceiling than I do, but I have him as a high floor player. As you know, I like Miami pitchers. I like that park. I do like how Miami develops players. I like to see how they deal with the Miami changeup when it comes to Meyer, as far as teaching him his secondaries. Um, the question I have, and this goes with some of the other younger SPs coming in, is the fastball shape, right? He
mhm,
doesn't have the wiry frame that is going to have the wicked shape of the fastball. He does throw hard, but how is that going to be developed? And how is that going to combine with the movement of his secondaries?
mhm. I do, despite my Noble Meyer hate, I do have him at 73.
Mhm.
Um, my final contribution to the day is Aiden Miller, the third base prospect for the Philadelphia Phillies. He's a prototype to me. He's like the white right-handed hitting third base prospect, who hits for power, who plays a slick third base. He was drafted last year at the bottom of the first round. I think that people thought he could have gone higher. He's a very talented player. The Phillies I think, are starting to do a much better job at developing hitting talent. I think they're starting to believe a bit more in their minor league development and the system. He was a little older for the draft. He did put up an 804 OPS and 66 at bats in rookie ball and low A, but a talented player. You can kind of pick and choose from that group of third basemen that were picked in the first round last season. Braden Taylor, Brock Wilken, like those types of dudes. There's a lot of really good players to choose from in that list. But Aiden Miller is my guy at 91.
Mm-hmm.
Is he higher up on your list?
I have him at 69.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then I have Wilkin at 87. So I have him as the highest among those. I don't have Taylor on my list, but I have
Amongst
him
that
at the
group.
highest at third baseman. I like the park factor there. He's pretty much destined to be the third baseman, right? Bohm is going to move over to first, eventually, and yeah. So I what I like about him too, he does have a decent hit tool along with the power that could be developed.
That was our 91 through 100.
I really like the guys in my 81 through 90. I think there's, Wilkins 87. He's probably the one I like the least. I mean, as far as following these players, and the one I think have a lot to offer, and just fun to see develop.
I agree. I think this list, this 10 that we gave just now, I don't love them. I think a lot of them so I try for it not to be a framework or systematic in terms of how I rank players, but I think what naturally happens at the bottom of the list is you say, oh, here's a dude that should be in my top 100. I don't love him. I know the talent is that of a top 100 player. I know he's ranked higher on a lot of other lists. I should probably get him on my list, even though I don't necessarily believe in that dude, right? That tends to be it for me. But then 81, maybe 71 through 90 is like, these are guys who may not be on others' lists, but I really like them a lot. And so I need to get them on here. Chase Petty's one of them. Chase Petty looks amazing. I'm excited to watch him. Do you think he could be up in Cincinnati this year?
Who knows with their, they have a lot of players with a lot of history with injury, right?
Right.
Including, so yeah, is volatile. I definitely could see him up.
Should I just read off all the pitchers that might be in the major league this season? Or no?
Yeah, I was honest about that one.
Sure, I appreciate that. I'll respect that and refrain from naming Garrett Jones and Chase Hampton and Jacob Mizorowski and those types of dudes. Also, that's all right. They're not listening anyways. It's all good. All right, man. I guess I will talk to you Sunday for our
Oh, yes, other pod, yeah.
4-man pod. So on Sunday night, it'll be me, Matt, Smurf, and Aaron Alvis, and we are going to get together and talk about some awards projections for 2024 in baseball, and then we'll have a couple of fantasy baseball strategy sorts of questions, which are less. I'll just leave it at that. So MVP, Cy Young, Rookie of the Year, that type of thing, and then some strategy as well with our annual roundtable. Should be a lot of fun. I think that's it, man.
All right, man.
Let me ask you
Looking
one more
forward to it.
question as a spoiler alert. Who is your number one prospect? Since we won't get to it for another 5 weeks, 6 weeks.
My number one prospect is Jackson Churio.
Huh?
Uh,
Surprised.
Jackson Churio. I like the 30-30 guys. I just think their value is through the roof in fantasy baseball. Want to know who my number 3 is? And this is somebody I just traded is
Wyatt Langford.
Wood. I have Wood ahead of Langford.
I would have had a Cruz now. There's that.
Well, I have
Um,
Cruz too, so I can see that happening. I have Cruz and Wood at the same tier. Yeah.
and I have, so my number one is, and you're going to be surprised by this, and I always love power speed, as you know,
Hmm.
and I think that's the name of the game. My number one is Junior Caminero. I think he's
Oh,
that good.
nice.
I think he's that good. I think he's head and shoulders above everybody else from a power and a hit tool standpoint. I just think he's special. And screw the steals as far as I'm concerned at that point in time, especially if he's playing third, right?
Mm-hmm.
If he's playing third, he's not competing against anyone else who's stealing bases anyways. Uh,
Hmm. And everybody underestimates his because of his power, his hit tool. He could be somebody that's 280,
he's a
290.
tremendous hit tool. He could hit 300 as far as I'm concerned because he hits the ball so hard. Uh, any surprise, just real quick, do you have a surprise guy in your top 10
A surprise guy.
or
Let me
two?
let me see. I do not. I'm looking here. All my players, I think I do have Dominguez in my top 10, which we could debate, but a lot of people do.
Sir
But he
Anthony?
Basayo I have at 10, but some people are putting Basayo at one next year, right? One,
Right.
two. So yeah, I think the one that like I don't have Jenkins in my top 20,
Mhm.
because I see him as maybe 2015 type of hitter.
Mhm.
I have Max Clark at 11. He's almost in my top 10. I
Sure.
love Max Clark.
I do too. Jenkins isn't my top 20, but he's 20. The surprises in my top 10 are probably predictable. But I have, well, one, I have Job at 9. So I've still
Okay.
Job at 9.
Mhm.
Uh
I have him at 13, so we're right there. And I bet you have Termar maybe at 6, 7.
7. So I have Tamar Johnson at 7. And
I have him at 16, so again, not far off.
man, I'll be so ecstatic if he just blows up and shove it in everybody's face. And then I have Noel Marte at 10 as well.
Mm. Yeah, I have Marte at 7.
Wow, really?
The one that's falling a little bit is Carter. I have Carter at 9, but why I'm keeping him there is he did put, you always get these spring stories, but he's up to 192 now. He did put some muscle on, so it's interesting. And I have liked his at bat so far, besides when he got hit in the hand,
Mhm.
and everybody panicked. But yeah, he's falling. He's a lot higher on other people's lists. I would wager he's not in your top 10.
He's 21.
21. Okay.
And I wish my 192 was muscle. Let's see. The only other, not to spoil it all, but the only other real, kind of less conventional stuff I have is I've got 3 Mariners prospects from 11 to 20, and none of them are Harry Ford.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got
Emerson a lot. Speaking of putting on weight,
Emerson
I still think you're going to keep him.
I have
I still
Emerson at
think you're
12,
bluffing.
Emerson at 12, Cole Young at
Notice
16,
how he's changing the subject.
and Montes at 17. Well, if you want to talk about that, like for 2 seconds, how many picks do you have before round 5?
Um, well, I think balls is the one you got to balls deep is the one you need to worry about. Yeah, I just have 2 picks before.
If Balls Deep takes him, then take him. I think there are a lot of other prospects that I like a lot that I'm happy to take instead of Emerson. I love Emerson. I believe in him. But there are other guys that I enjoy and that I think are going to be great that I'm not willing to reach too high on Emerson necessarily, but part of the strategy is you're probably the only other guy that's in on him, and you have a couple of picks to fill big holes
Mhm.
before I have most of my 5th rounders. You can always trade for one, of course, but
And I doubt people are listening this far from our league.
part of why I'm saying it, right?
And then, yeah, the 2 guys largely because of proximity, but also because of what I've tried to stick by, that are in my top 20. That one is in everybody's top 20. That's Cole Keith. He's at
Mhm.
19. The thing that I don't like about him is Detroit. But I do have Bush as 18, Michael Bush as 18,
Homer.
just because he fits the profile as a hitter. And even with the Bellinger signing, the Cubs have made it clear that he's their first baseman, and Bellinger is center field. The bad news that comes there for investors and dynasty players is PCA is going down. Even
Right.
if you heard Craig Counsell during a game talk about PCA, he kept emphasizing he's still young, he's still young. So I see
Right.
Bellinger coming into center, Bush coming into first. But anyway, I think we both have loved Bush's hit profile. His value is going to go down when he loses second and third next year, but
Mhm.
I could see him as a Roy candidate.
Yeah,
As
he's 36 for me. I actually had Colt Keith at 41 because I
mm,
think I think people have been too high on him. B, he's super slow footed. And
mm,
so, he could be like a Nolan Gorman type, right? He might have a better hit tool, but he might have a little bit less power, and he's playing in Detroit, as you said. So to me, with no speed at second base at a position where you need steals, you better hit 30 home runs to be of value. Otherwise, you're Brandon Drury, right? And
mm,
so I don't know if Brandon Drury is the type of player I would want to have at 41 overall or at higher than 41 overall. We
yeah,
could go on we could go on and on.
yeah, I know this is so exciting.
Super fun. We
Yeah,
will come back to you next week. Probably cover hopefully like maybe 75 or 65 to no 75 to 90, something like that.
mhm,
Um, and then again the roundtable this Sunday. Man, it's coming fast and furious right now. I love
yeah,
it. It's the
it's
best,
exciting.
best time
Christmas.
of year.
All
Appreciate you,
right,
man.
take it easy.
You too.